What's shaking, everyone? Hello. Today I am going to be reviewing, as you can tell by the title of this video, Black Friday, which is Starkid's newest show, which is why I'm wearing a Christmas hat in March. This is going to be a little bit more of an sort of informal review. It's not going to be as scripted like my Moulin Rouge review was, if you saw that. But I'm just going to be sharing my thoughts on all the major components of the show, and then I also asked you guys for any specific questions, so I'm going to go through those, and if there's anything I didn't discuss, I'll talk about that there. Please excuse my voice, it's a little hoarse. I'm getting over a cold. So very first thing, I just wanted to do overall impression. I really liked it. I saw the digital ticket before I saw the full show on YouTube. Both versions, the whatever opening weekend and the other one that they did. And I liked it then too. I think I liked it more the second time around. In terms of like overall Starkid shows, it's probably more in the middle of the pack. I don't know if I would give it like a number rating, maybe like a 6 or 7 out of 10. Very, very different than a lot of their other shows, which I'll definitely get into later. I hesitate to say fun because it is so dark, but a fun show. It's a very interesting just concept for a musical in general. And I think it did some really interesting things. So if any of you didn't see it, this is definitely going to have spoilers in it because, yeah, there's not that many horror musicals in general. So any horror musical already has like some kind of originality to it just because it's such a slim genre. But especially like this kind of horror is, I don't know if I know any other musical that's the same genre as Black Friday. So that's cool. And I think they did it really well. It was definitely scary, like legit scary. I don't know, I'm scared really easily, but I remember the first time I saw it, like the next day I was like just thinking about it all day and like could barely sleep. So that's just me. But it worked, at least in my opinion. Yeah, so the first thing I kind of wanted to mention was all the performances. So as always, of course, like all these people are really talented. All the performances were amazing. We got a couple new cast members, so just to shout out them. James Talbert, who has done choreography for Starkid before. He's an amazing choreographer, but he also performed in this. He played a couple characters. He did a great Obama impression at one point, which was really funny. Then there's Angela, who played Lex. She was really great. That was the thing, because originally, I'm sure if you are a Starkid fan, you know that Mariah Rose Faith was supposed to play Lex initially, and then she got cast in Mean Girls, so she isn't in it. I don't want to compare them because they're both, you know, really talented actresses, and they're very, very different actresses. So, you know, I don't want to say like, oh, I'm sure Mariah would have been better or would have been worse or anything, because I don't know. I'm sure they both would have done great. They're just really different types. So I'm just in my head like wondering how Mariah would have done it instead, because they are very different. Like they have different looks, they have kind of just a different vibe. I don't know, it's just interesting to think about. But I think Angela was great. She played up more the kind of edgy side of it, fit that role kind of really well, so I think she did really well with that. Kurt Mega also is new, and probably most of you guys know him from Spies Are Forever. He played the president in a couple other small roles. Kim Whalen, who is actually his wife, played Becky. She's great. She has a beautiful, beautiful voice. She has like a really high soprano voice that is really lovely. She was great. Kendall was the young girl, I think she's like 13, who played Hannah, who's Lex's sister, and she's new. She was amazing. She has the big song at the end, and her voice is like fantastic. She was really good. She didn't have like a gigantic part, but every scene she was in, she was amazing in, which always astounds me when such young people are really talented, because, you know, I'm like way older than her and I'm not talented at all. So yeah, so shout out to all those people. They were all really great. Welcome to Starkid. We should all welcome them with open arms because they're all really talented, great people. Other performances, I was so excited to have Dylan back. Like, we haven't had him since Starkid and anything, and he obviously delivered. He was amazing. His songs were all beautiful and he was just really great. I think for me, Corey was a big standout. His big number, I loved that song. I think it's probably because the last role he played was this really nice kind of nerdy guy, and like now he's playing this kind of skeevy, gross you know, guy, that it was just a nice contrast to see, you know, the different roles he can do. Lauren was really funny. She was really good as, what's the character? Linda Monroe. It's interesting to see John in different roles, because obviously in Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals, he only played the one role. He played just Paul the whole time. In this show, he played a lot of other smaller roles. He played the lawyer, Gary, and a couple other small things. So it was nice to see him do kind of more variety, because I think he's really talented, and it was nice to see his range more than just playing Paul, because I mean he was amazing as Paul, but it was just nice to see him kind of spread his wings a little bit. I liked the music a lot in this show. There were some songs I didn't like as much, but I think even the song that I liked least, I liked better than the song that I liked least in. When I listen to Guy, I always skip What Do You Want, Paul? I really don't like that song, sorry. But I don't think there's any song in this show that I would skip really. There's some that I like less. Maybe Monsters and Men, I don't like it as much. I would still listen to it. It's not like grating or anything. I definitely think Jeff's lyrics have improved so much. I think he's getting much better at writing lyrics. I've had some problems with his lyrics in the past in Guy and in Trail to Oregon that they can be kind of clunky. There's a few problems that he has. One is just really overstuffing lines. Sometimes he does it like well to comedic effect, especially in, I think, Trail to Oregon. Other songs, it's more comes off as just wordy and unintelligible than clever or funny. There wasn't as much of that in this show. Sometimes these problems with rhymes, like they're either just not there, if I don't know if it was a deliberate choice or not, or if I don't know, it just doesn't really always work. And sometimes they're like near rhymes, but they're not, they're like almost there, but it's not quite there that it stands out too much. So I think that's a problem sometimes too, and I think he's getting better at that. There were a lot of songs that I was like, wow, these lyrics are just like beautiful. I was very impressed, so good job. Music wise, obviously I think his music has always been amazing. Like, I don't know that much about music, so it's hard for me to judge completely, but it seemed really good. Instrumentally, all the arrangements were really cool. I don't know who does that. I'll look it up later. But I really liked all the motifs from Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals. I think there was the America is Great Again one for General McNamara, and there was kind of the Alien Invading Minds one that I don't want to sing because I don't want to get copyrighted, but you know what I'm talking about. That kind of was like the spooky one that came back a couple times. Those were like a really nice, more subtle way to tie in the previous show rather than the direct shoutouts. Like, it was like, if you've seen it, you might recognize it, but even if you haven't seen it, it's just like, oh, that's just a nice little motif that's in there. So that was really good. I don't know, maybe Harry Potter musical has had that because it was there were sequels, but it's very unusual to have musical sequels in general, so it's interesting to see how they do that. Somebody asked me if I think they basically said that they didn't think that the music was cohesive enough, and I kind of agree. I think there are some, like, genre-wise, it's a little bit disjointed, but not always in a deliberate way. I think for Guy, there was a lot of musical, like, show-stopping number was this big 11 o'clock traditional theater kind of number, and then we got, like, the really cheesy ballad for Tied Up My Heart. They seemed very purposeful. I think for this show, there was some examples that maybe didn't do that as much. I think the one that's coming to my head is probably Monsters and Men. That song, I think that's probably my least favorite song in the show. Also, even though I liked the song, I think What Do You Say was a little bit out of place too. It seemed a little bit too silly compared to the rest of the music and the tone of the show. And there's a couple things that were like that too, not just music, but other characters and things like that I think were a bit out of place. But overall, like, I think some of the other songs, like ones that are coming to my head, Feast or Famine, What If Tomorrow Comes, is it called Wiggle? That song, Linda's song at the end. Those songs all had a very similar kind of tone and everything like that, and genre that worked really well and kind of really contributed to the overall kind of tone of the show, which was really good. Choreo, amazing. I love the choreo. I think because James Talbot did again, he did Guy, he also did, I think, a Harry Potter sequel and Twisted, which are all the top in my top. They're 3 of the top 4 in my choreography ranking. So good job. No, his choreography is great. Although I do have a little problem with one of the songs. I think the show had more numbers that were not as traditional musical theater, which I love. I love, traditional jazz dance kind of stuff. That's what I did when I used to dance in high school, and that was like one of my favorite things. But I also did modern dance, so whenever I see modern and like other, contemporary and stuff like that in musicals, it makes me happy too. So there was some of that in there, which was really cool. However, my favorite number from watching the digital ticket, choreography wise, was What If Tomorrow Comes, and you couldn't see the choreo like at all in the recording. You could barely see it, which made me really sad because it's really cool. I loved Deck the Halls of Northville High School. The choreography was just so over the top and funny that it was really great. Feast or Famine had some really cool choreo, although again, that was cut out a little bit too with the camera work. Oh yeah, and I just want to point out a little, like, I know in the past in Twisted and in Guy we got our kind of like, everybody says our dancing duo of Robert and Lauren, and like now in this show we also have James in there too, so that was really fun that they had little like moments of, they really like highlighted them because they're all such great dancers, so that was really fun. When I did my costumes ranking, everyone was really mad that I put Guy at the bottom. I think they stepped it up a little bit for this show. I think it still wasn't like my favorite costumes or anything. I think that they did in this show more of what I wish they had done in Guy, that the costumes were a little bit stylized, that they were still looked like street clothes, like more normal fashion that you'd think people would wear. Linda's costume is a perfect example. That was a great costume. There are a few examples that were a little bit off. Okay, the one. I'm just gonna talk about it now because it's been on my head. I really hated the character of Sherman. I know people are gonna not agree with me on that, but I think he was so out of place in the show, because the show was very grounded in, like, the characters were very grounded in reality. Even Linda, she was a little bit more over the top, and even though her, you know, kind of speech was a little bit exaggerated, she was still a fairly realistic character. I think honestly the fact that, and this is not a dig against Jamie at all, I think she did really, really well with the character. She's a very great character actor. She plays it was honestly kind of the same thing that happened in Guy with Charlotte. I think Charlotte was way more over the top of a character than the rest of the main characters. It just kind of took away from the darker tone of the show, especially Black Friday. It was even more of a stark contrast because Sherman was even more of a ridiculous character in an even darker show. So it kind of just took it away from me. I think the fact that that character was played by Jamie, that the character was the character in drag, it made it worse because it was so much more over the top and silly. Silly is a good word, because I think things that are funny are fine, and like comedy and comic relief is great. Starkid's really good at it, but when it's kind of silly and like goofy, then it's not as satisfying. It just seems kind of like, you know, like when they put a silly sidekick in like a Disney movie or something, that it's like seems almost like it's for kids. So I did not appreciate that, and I really hope that Jamie in the next show or in another show gets a kind of meatier role, because I think she's so talented and she has done really well in like every role that she's been given, and I think she's also grown a lot as an actress and a singer. So I hope she can get like a more emotionally satisfying role rather than just like a silly character, because she's really good at it and she's so funny. I think that's why that they do it, is because she's so good at playing those kind of over the top silly characters. She's great at voices, and she's just very like physically she can do those kind of things really well, and she played the role I think exactly how they meant her to play it, and she did it really well for what it was supposed to be. I just think it didn't fit in with the rest of the character. And what I was saying about why this came up with costumes is because that is the costume that I hated most, is because it's just so over the top and out of place, and I didn't like that. Even musically, like I was saying with What Do You Say, there was parts where she was kind of doing her voice, where that like Sherman was singing in the, like, he had that funny accent voice thing that in the song you could hear it, and it was like stood out, was like ooh, because it's like funny, but when it's in an ensemble like that and everybody else is singing like more normally, it just seemed to look kind of weird, and it just didn't really vibe for me. I don't know. I think the costumes were, yeah, they were overall pretty good, a little bit better than Guy, but not my favorite. They were just not that special. I don't know. I want to get into some of the more meaty stuff. So characters, a lot of people are asking me too, like, favorite characters, what do I think about Ethan, all this stuff. I think the characters were pretty good. The main problem, this goes into the plot, is that really just nobody was given enough time is the biggest issue. Especially Ethan. I know it's going to come up in the comments. I do think it was a little sudden, and I know that it's like, oh, you're supposed to be like, oh, it's so shocking that, you know, this nice young guy was killed so soon and so unexpectedly. However, it didn't feel even shocking enough because I didn't know him at all. Like, he only had one song, he was barely in the show. Yeah, I don't know, it just felt kind of cheap, especially because I think if they had just killed him and then it was it, like, it would have been like kind of shocking. But then the fact that they tried to bring him back in that scene with Hannah where she was like envisioning him in the black and white or whatever, I could tell that they were trying to make it like, oh, it's so emotional, it's this guy that she loved and looked up to, but like I didn't really care because like I didn't have any connection to him really. So yeah, I think his character could have been in the show for like 10 more minutes longer and then they could have killed him and then it would have been a little better. I don't think that I connected with any of the characters as much as I connected with the characters in the Guy Who Liked Musicals, especially compared to like I think Bill was a really, really good example of kind of doing just a really simple story with in a kind of short time and making it so impactful. Yeah, and I don't think I felt that way as much about Tom or Becky or Lex or anything like that. And I like those characters. It's just it wasn't as balanced. Hannah, I think, was probably the most, I don't want to say disappointing, but I think they could have done more with, because I really don't think they developed her her abilities or anything like that very meaningfully, and they were like almost there, but it wasn't quite. So yeah, I just didn't really get that connected with her either, and she was barely in it, honestly. So yeah, I think the Hannah and Lex story was the one that had the most potential, but they dropped the ball with most. I think Tom was probably the strongest of those characters. Not that we knew him going in, but since we knew Paul and Emma and he was connected to them immediately, maybe it just felt like, oh, like, I kind of get this guy, I know where he's coming from a little bit. I think Becky, it was a little bit just like kind of similar to Emma, where it kind of was like an exposition dump. I just think that it wasn't handled as gracefully as with Emma. Maybe it is because it was a heavier topic. The fact that it was kind of just like thrown in there, it did feel a little bit harder to swallow than Emma's story. Like, because obviously Emma's story is sad and like she lost her sister, but it's not the same kind of thing. It's a lot less. It's a lot more palatable. That drop though, that bomb drop that she killed her husband. I don't know. I think it was a little bit like, whoa, like it wasn't very, I don't know. I don't want to say it was like bad, but because her and Tom like weren't the main story, it did feel a little bit kind of just like thrown in there. And a little bit more like for shock value than anything. I don't think it was like terrible, but it didn't work that well for me. I think the main problem with kind of all of this, it was too stuffed, and I have been thinking about this since the digital ticket of if I were to cut out one of the stories, what would I cut out? And now that I've seen it recorded like on YouTube, I definitely would cut out the president stuff, all the stuff with Howard Goodman, with General McNamara, and just that whole storyline I think is unnecessary. And I really would have liked if the whole thing was contained in the mall and just felt more complete. I think the president stuff, I know what they were going for because it was such a like a social commentary heavy thing that tying in the government and all this stuff made sense, but I just don't think they had enough time for it. And if they cut that out, they could have still achieved the same ideas and conveyed all that kind of stuff, but within Hatchetfield without going outside of that. I had no emotional connection to him at all. Like I didn't care about, you know, the president. His whole story just seemed kind of like exposition. Yeah, that whole storyline just felt kind of empty to me, and I think that they could have found other ways to explain the black and white and explain all that stuff without bringing it outside of Hatchetfield. I think especially with Hannah and Lex that they could have done something there that expanded their storyline, given more of that kind of world building stuff to them. The actual plot, like the idea of these forces that are kind of controlling things, like that was a really cool idea. It's kind of like a standard MO of sci-fi movies of something takes place on a smaller scale, but then there's like larger forces behind it. They kind of say things about society, and yeah, they did that really well, and I think it's really cool that it worked in a musical because you don't see that as much in musicals. I thought it was really cool that there was more social commentary in the show because there hasn't really been that much social commentary in a lot of other Starkid shows. There's like a little bit in Guy Who Did Like Musicals, but it was way more general of just general kind of sci-fi stuff. This was like obviously very pointed about America and American society and consumerism and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was really, I think they did it pretty well. Again, I think that's the whole thing with the president's story, that they didn't need that to do that kind of things. Like I think they did it well enough just in Feast or Famine and in Doors Are Open and with Linda's character and all that. I think they could have still had the same impact of that kind of storyline, but within the confines of Hatchetfield. This whole show did make me feel kind of like, ooh, we're kind of fucked. Society is, you know, not great right now. It's cool that they're getting into more kind of deeper themes than just like comedies. A lot of people ask me what I thought about the camera work, the new filming style. The fact that it's in 4K, yeah, was really cool. It mostly worked well. I like that they had some cool effects, like I talked about in my 3 a.m. Reaction video, that there was like a headshot, like when they shot Linda, it was like legit headshot. I thought that was really cool. I don't know, I like action movies, so maybe that's just my kind of like thing. There were some parts that it was a little off. I know I mentioned What If Tomorrow Comes. I had mixed feelings about it because one, I really liked that when they did that song, they recorded it pretty sure, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm almost 100% sure that almost that whole song was recorded with no audience there. Because I remember in the digital recording in both versions that there was a lot of audience reactions in that part. They were like, oh, you know, just gasps and stuff when you saw different characters come out and everything, and just like more like that. And I think that the fact that they took out the audience for that song made it more chilling. It made it seem very like immediate and real, which is very different than, say, Inevitable. In my video where I talked about making a guy into a movie, I talked about how I would want the ending to be completely dark, no jokes or anything. That is what I'm talking about. What If Tomorrow Comes is the exact type of thing that I'm talking about. Like it's not funny. That song is not funny. It's really scary and dark and chilling, and I think I would like it to be like that. So just as an example. But that song, they cut out, you couldn't see the choreography like at all, and it was really disappointing. This is not a Starkid thing. This is a problem that so many recorded versions of musicals have, and they do it at the Tonys always too, and it really bothers me. They'll close up on random people or on only the person singing when everyone else in the background is dancing or, you know, doing something else. And I think it should be like just a base rule that if multiple people are dancing, you should be able to see them, period. Like you should be able to see all the choreo so that you get at least partially the same experience as if you were to go see it in theaters. Some better examples, I think Wiggle was beautifully filmed. That was so cool, and you could still see the choreo, especially when Robert and James did their little things where Robert did like a big jump and James did his like death drop, which was awesome. And that was one of the things I was actually worried about. It's like, oh no, I hope that you can see that in the recording, because it was so cool. And you could, and that whole portion, I think they just did a really good job of filming it. All the individual songs obviously were filmed really beautifully, and I think the scenes were pretty good. It was just some of the dance numbers. And there were a couple of just like weird moments of editing. I don't know, as an editor, like I'm somebody who, you know, does editing all the time, and not just for YouTube. Like I'm a film student, so I have edited like short films and stuff, so I do know about editing, and like I'm not amazing at it, but I know like the principles. And there were some parts that it was just like weird cuts, and like I think there was one, I don't remember what scene it was, but there was one weird cut of I can't remember his character's name, but Corey's character, where maybe it was in the song where it was like out of focus for a second, and they didn't cut until like a little bit too late. It was just a weird moment that, I don't know, probably nobody else noticed, but I noticed. Sound, there were some sound problems. There was some weird sound mixing moments that either people's mics were weird levels, or even though the song was really good in Wiggle, where they go jam, you know, or whatever, right before the jumps, where it like cut really weird, like it was very low, and then it like got immediately really loud. I don't know. I think maybe they cut together sound from two different recordings. Like something was just off about it, and stuff like that happened a couple times where there was just some stuff that was off. Also, I think people are talking about this like it's the very first time Starkid's filmed like this. It actually is kind of similar to how they filmed Twisted. Twisted also had more handheld stuff and close-ups and in general, and there were a few examples in that too where the choreography was cut off a little bit. And I think Dream a Little Harder, there was the part where Robert and Lauren are doing their little dance and you couldn't see the whole thing. But besides that, yeah, this is the only other example I think. It is filmed in a very like filmic style rather than just like, oh, this is just for kind of posterity's sake, I guess. Oh, I think one good thing, I think the audience mix was pretty good, because this is a problem. Okay, so if you didn't watch the digital ticket, you wouldn't know this because they fixed it, honestly. There were parts where there were some very annoying audience members that I don't want to say overreacted, because I understand why they reacted like that, but like when I talked about it a little bit for What If Tomorrow Comes, where they were like, oh, these like huge gasps for like, oh my god, like, you know, that kind of reaction to these things that really just took you out of the moment a little bit. Yeah, I think that they mixed that well, so it wasn't as distracting. I feel like I just need to talk about this because it has been bothering me a lot. Jeff needs to cool it with the falsetto. It is getting out of hand. It makes me sad because he has a beautiful voice. He's an amazing voice. I love his voice in Twisted, in any of his shows. He has always the songs that he sounds just a gorgeous sound. Like, he has such a nice voice, but when he overuses falsetto in serious songs, because I think it works well in some of his comedic songs. Like, I don't know, The Grind is the first one that comes to mind. I think, he has the big falsetto note at the end. It's really funny and it sounds pretty good, but like when he does it in so many of his songs, it really is distracting and it doesn't sound, it's like sharp a lot and it's just not, I don't know, I don't think it's doing what he thinks it's doing. And I think maybe the problem is because he wrote the music, it's like he doesn't know his own limits, kind of, which happens a lot to people. It was really egregious in, I guess it's my least favorite song, but Monsters and Men, there's some parts where he like real goes up and it's not great. I don't know if it was Feast or Famine or What Do You Say, where it's not even his main thing, it's just him in the ensemble, which I think makes it worse because it's like distracting. It's like one person in the ensemble shouldn't stand out that much. I noticed it when I was watching it, and then I noticed it even more when I was making my harmonies video, because there's one harmony that was like, oh, that's a harmony, and then when I listened to it on its own, I was like, oh, that does not sound good. I hope that in his next show he can cool it with the falsetto a little bit, because I think he has a lovely voice and I want him to use it in a way that is more flattering to him. So this first question that I got from Professor Higgins, from not the actual person, like the YouTube channel. Who would you say is the main character and main villain, and what do you think the ending meant? Okay, so the ending part I'll talk about later, because a million people asked me to talk about theories and to talk about that. Main villain and main character. I think they meant it to be an ensemble, so I think they meant it to be pretty balanced between the Tom and Becky or the Lex and Hannah story. I think that Tom and Becky seemed to get a little more time, but I don't know, it's hard to tell. I think they meant it to be an ensemble though. And I think it could have worked, but again, like I talked about my problems with before with the president story, I think it just was spread a little too thin. As to main villain, I guess Wiggly is the main villain, but like, yeah, because there were so many like iterations, and they kind of talked about this. There was like, oh, it's like the Trinity kind of thing, that you have Linda as the prophet and she's kind of evil, and then you also have like Uncle Wily, who's like the incarnation, and then you have literal Wiggly and the black and white as a concept, and then you also have even I can't remember his character's name, Corey's character, the toy store guy. Also in his own right kind of a villain, but he's more of a realistic, he's just a greedy businessman, I guess. So yeah, I guess the real villain is capitalism. I don't know. That's kind of I guess the real villain of the story is kind of a, metaphor about America and our society and everything. So I guess that's the real villain. The real villain is capitalism, which I'm sure if my dad watches this, he'll hate that I said that. But that's the message of the show, so I guess. But that's a good question. Thank you for that question. Conman1226 asked, in your opinion, did the connections to Guy You Didn't Like Musicals hurt Black Friday as a standalone work? This is a really good question. I've been thinking about this a little bit. There's so few sequels of musicals, and the ones that exist are not great because of the way that Starkid works, where it is this online thing combined with live theater. It's like they're in a very unique position to be very experimental with the stuff they do, which I think is awesome. I think it's so cool that they can really take those risks that you can never do that on Broadway. You can never make a show with this deep of a lore to it. So it's really awesome that they can do that. So I don't think it necessarily hurts. I think there were a few moments where the kind of references and stuff came off as a little fan servicey, particularly at the end. It's a kind of problem that I have in general with comedy when it was getting darker. Oh, should I move these boxes? Like that kind of thing is like a little bit, it's like wink wink, like it's already a dumb joke, so the fact that it was a dumb joke on top of a reference is like a little bit too much. Even the Professor Higgins thing, when they were like, oh, I got this kooky biology professor, whatever they said. Yeah, it was a little bit fan servicey. And Wear Watch, that was the other one at the end. All those things were, I think their placement was just what was a little bad. But I think that some of the smaller ones were more like cute and just fun. As a general like overall story, like with its connection to Emma and Paul and that kind of thing, I think that wasn't a problem, because it's hard to tell, because obviously I've seen Guy, I know the show, so I can't tell if it's understandable without that. But I think the plot is still understandable without knowing that lore. And even if it wasn't, I think it's fine that it wouldn't be, because I guess it's not a problem because it's accessible. So if this was a Broadway musical and there was a sequel and nobody else had been able, and only people that could go to see Broadway could go see the sequel and you couldn't actually see the full thing, or you could only listen to the music or something, and then they made a sequel to it that had like lore behind it and stuff, that would be a problem because then nobody could understand it. But because this is a musical that's available online for free and anybody can watch it and then go to see the sequel, I think it's fine because it allows them to experiment and to do that kind of stuff. Green Bean asks, I'd be interested in your thoughts about the tone shift and what that means for both Hatchetfield series and Starkid as a whole, since a lot of people didn't like that Black Friday wasn't as funny and had a bittersweet ending. This is also a really good question. I've been thinking about this a lot too. So this kind of begs another question, which is like, what is Starkid? Because it's weird. There's not really any other example of a theater group that I can think of like this that works in this way. So I guess like what is at the core, like if the Langs didn't work on a Starkid show, would it still be a Starkid show? Because like obviously besides that, we've had different writers and actors and everything for every different show. So is that kind of the core, or is it just like the name? I don't know. But I think it's good that, you know, they're experimenting and they're taking leaps, because it's just cool that they can do that. Again, like I said, you don't get to do that on Broadway because, you know, you have to sell to a wider audience. But because Starkid is a lot of fan funded and is on the internet and stuff, they have more leeway to kind of do these kind of things. And even if it doesn't always work as well, like even if it is a miss, at least it's like they got to try that and learn for the next show. So like I think hopefully from doing Guy and from doing Black Friday now, that their next show, which I know everybody's saying, is it Nerdy Prudes Must Die? I don't know where that came from, but I guess that's the next Hatchetfield show. They can learn more and create like new cool concepts and stuff like that. So I like that they're going in a dark direction. I think also it's cool to grow with your audience. I mean, I started watching Starkid when I was like, I don't know, 12 or 13. So, and now I'm an adult. So like it's good for them not to be stagnant and to be changing and growing with their audience. I think that's good for any person, any group, any, you know, band or YouTuber, whoever, to, you know, not just do the same thing forever, because one, for yourself it's boring, and two, for your audience it's boring. So I think it's good that they're evolving over time. Specifically to the darker tone, I don't know, I liked it. I thought it was very satisfying. Like I said in my movie video about Guy, like I kind of wish that the ending was darker, because like it was actually dark, like conceptually, that yes, like everyone dies, but the fact that it ended like in a funny way, you know, Emma running around the thing being like, oh my god, are we in a loop? It didn't have that kind of same impact. So I liked that Black Friday went there, and you can still watch the show and laugh and it's still funny. And for Hatchetfield, I don't know, I have a feeling that the next show they do is going to be really dark too. I don't think they would go backwards. I don't know, but maybe they will, because this is kind of a different type of horror, a different type of sci-fi thing, so maybe they'll go to a whole other thing, maybe like, I don't know, like a slasher or something, you know, I don't know. Q723, did you get attached to the characters as well as you got attached to the Guy characters? No, I think I mentioned this a little bit. I didn't. I got way more attached, I think specifically to Bill and to Emma and Paul, compared to, I think, Bill compared to Becky and Tom. I don't know, I just think that they did better with his character. Maybe it was because the story was more contained, like it was only in Hatchetfield compared to the stuff that they did outside of in the White House or whatever, that it kind of just pulled me away from it a little bit, so I just didn't feel as attached. I mean, definitely, obviously, Ethan I did not get attached to because he died, like, immediately. But I think even Hannah and Lex, like, there was never enough time to kind of settle with them, as opposed to with Bill and Paul and Emma, who were kind of the emotional core of Guy. Because, I mean, obviously Charlotte and Ted and stuff were there too, but they were more comic relief. I don't think it's like, oh, I didn't feel anything, but just not as much as I felt for Bill. Maybe I'll watch it again and I'll get more connected to it, but I think I more immediately had that kind of deeper emotional connection to Bill and Paul and Emma than I did to Lex and Becky and Tom. Una asked me, follow me on Twitter, I know you. Did you think it was well balanced between horror, tragedy, and comedy? Honestly, yes. I think it did a really good balance. Maybe seems a little off to some people because they did brand it as a horror comedy. I think honestly it's not a comedy. It is funny. Like, I don't think it's not a comedy because the jokes didn't land well. All the jokes in it landed really well. They just weren't as many, and there was just more dark moments. So it definitely, like, it balanced more on the side of horror. and drama rather than on the side of comedy, which like I said, is not, I don't think is a problem. I liked it, but yeah, I think it worked well. I just think that maybe it was branded as a comedy and it really isn't at its core a comedy. It didn't feel like a comedy. It felt like a horror movie or a horror show with comedic elements. Because even like Sweeney Todd has comedic moments, but it's obviously, Sweeney Todd is not a comedy, it's a horror musical. Sophia Lepresti asked, your thoughts on balance between characterization and world building? So yeah, I talked about this a little bit. I think it was a little off. I think they should have focused more on characterization. And I think that had to do with all this kind of exposition stuff that with the president and McNamara. And if they had channeled that into Lex's story, even with Linda's story, they could have done that a little bit. And then it would have been kind of killed two birds with one stone. They could have done more characterization with her while also establishing some of the stuff about the black and white. I talked about this a little bit, but Lauren M asks, were the guy references forced? I think I'm the only one who couldn't stand the references. They were so forced, ruined the tone in some scenes, and were honestly kind of cringeworthy. So I kind of agree. Like I said, I think I agree more towards the end. Like the farther it got on, the less I think they should have used it. Like I don't think that the wear a watch should have been in there at all. I think it was just too, yeah, it was kind of cringy. It was like a weird part to put a joke like that in there. But I think the ones towards the beginning of the show when it was still kind of lighthearted were fine, because it's like, it's, you know, they're just lighthearted jokes, so it was a kind of little cute thing. Also, I think audience reaction had a big thing to do with it. If this was like a movie, then it wouldn't have been as much of a problem, but the fact that it was a musical with a live audience, again, I talked about this a little bit before, but in the digital ticket, like there were parts that were very annoying because people really overreacted. Definitely made it seem more cringeworthy and kind of took away from it a little bit. Universe asks, what were your biggest reactions? Mine had to be when McNamara showed up. I think definitely at the beginning, just when Paul and Emma were there, I was like, because I don't know, I thought that I know that they were kind of talked about that they would be in it, but I thought they would just have like cameos. I didn't think they would be like legit tied into the story. So I was like, whoa, oh my god, it's actually Paul and Emma. Lego Melons 15. You're like a top commenter. I see you comment all the time. How did you like the production value of things such as set design, costumes, etc. compared to Guy or other Starkid shows? I thought it was really great. I loved the sets. I'm going to be doing a set ranking. That's going to be my next ranking that I'll do in April for sure. So I'll put that, you'll see where it lands there. But I thought the sets were really cool. The part where the tinsel like turned into Wiggly when they were in the black and white was awesome. It was like, oh my god, it was so satisfying because you didn't think about, like, I'm so stupid. I should have known that that's what that was going to be there for, but it was just really clever. Raven Bond says, this isn't very significant, but I love how all the shoppers had their own distinct personalities. I could easily tell what they were trying to portray through their movements alone. I totally agree. I loved Kurt's character. I don't know what his name was, but Kurt's character, that like, it was just like a little, and he's like, hey, I lost my job at the plant, like I can't pay $100 for a doll. Like, it was like little things like that yeah, they kind of all had like just a little personality that, I don't know, made it more satisfying. I liked that a lot. And I think also worked well because it was like, oh, these are real people that are getting turned by this doll. You know, it's not like these evil people who are just greedy and hateful. It was like, no, these are normal people that are unhappy with their lives and are kind of seduced by this greed and this kind of mindset. So I thought that was, yeah, that was a really nice little touch that worked really well. Molly Pokrass? I don't know if that's how you say your name. The problems I had were that it got too emotional too quickly. Also, I didn't care about anyone in particular, especially making Tom and Becky sympathetic after they try to kill Hannah. About the too emotional too quickly, I could see what you mean. Yeah, like I said before, I don't know why this song, I guess I just have a problem with the song, but like, what do you say? Yeah, it kind of went from like silly to serious kind of quickly. I don't think it was too stark, but it could have been a little bit smoother. But I do think they set up at least a little bit more to be more serious towards the beginning because they had What Tim Wants. Like that song was a little bit more emotionally heavy from the get-go rather than like compared to like, I don't know, like La Di Da Da Day, which is like a ridiculous song. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I minded about Tom and Becky trying to kill Hannah. I think that they were trying to make it like, oh, no one's immune to this, kind of like Wiggly kind of can take root for anybody who is unsatisfied or unhappy with their life. Like it grabs onto that kind of emotional emptiness and then like forces you to, you know, do bad things for it. And I guess it was trying to show that like, yeah, even these people that we're supposed to be sympathetic towards and we're supposed to care about can be affected by that. Thoughts about what aspects of the show you found strongest / appreciate. This is from Lisbane. Appreciated the most. I know it's kind of vague, blah blah blah, but I love the emotional connections between the characters and the songs. I also love the messaging symbolism. Yes, I think really strong parts. I think just the concept in general. One, just the idea of a horror musical I always think is just cool because there's not that many of them. The idea of using Black Friday to kind of have this demon thing. I don't know, I think that works really well. I think a lot of the songs are really strong. And I think the tone of the show was just good. Like I said, with balancing the comedy and horror. I think they did a good job of it. I think not everyone agrees probably, but I think that it was sufficiently creepy. Somebody, I'll just clarify this because I think maybe this person's confused. Rumbleverse Cub says, do you feel that many of the references to Guy were incorrect? Like Man in a Hurry dies and Emma and John met in, I guess they mean Emma and Paul met in Guy and they were dating before. Yeah, I think this person maybe just misunderstands, which goes into like, I'll want to talk about theories, but they're kind of, it's a little bit unclear, but like there's kind of supposed to be maybe alternate universes, different dimensions, that kind of thing. So the timelines is not like a linear thing like, oh, Guy who did like musicals happen and then Black Friday happens, or vice versa. It's like they're just separate. Julia Mary says, Dylan, just Dylan. Agree. Yeah, I'm happy he's back. Buddy Boo 2017, I think I already kind of talked about this, but how the snippets of music from Guy may have added dimension to a scene, character, interaction for someone who knows Guy as opposed to someone watching Black Friday without the prior knowledge. Yeah, I think I talked about this a little bit. I think it worked really well because if you did know the show, then it was like a little added like, oh, you remember that from the last show, but even if you didn't know the show, then it was just kind of like a normal recurring motif which would work on its own anyway. So I think that was a really clever way to tie it in that could work if you saw it or if you didn't see it. Gillingham asked, very interested to hear your thoughts on the overall shift in tone from Starkid's last few musicals. Personally, I miss the more comedic, lighthearted shows than the horror-esque theme they seem to be programming. I like the shift. I would always love to have them go back to, like, I would not mind if they went back to like a straight up comedy, if they went into a parody again, or even if they went to like a drama, you know, a dramatic musical or something like that rather than musical comedy or musical horror. But I like that, I guess maybe it's because there's not a lot of musical horror that I like that it's doing something different and that they can experiment with it. Okay, Peace Love Chocolate, another top commenter I see all the time. Thoughts on the ensemble cast style, thoughts on Ethan, favorite theories, connections, and choreo and music composition comments. Okay, so I answered a lot of that. Thoughts on the ensemble cast style. I love ensemble shows. Like some of my favorite shows are ensemble shows like Chorus Line. And I think they're best when they kind of give everyone a little bit of time to shine. I think that this didn't quite get there. Like I said, I didn't feel completely connected to all the characters. And again, I think that really just had to do with the president's storyline. If they cut that out, it would have been a little bit more balanced, but I like the idea of it, and I would love for the next show to also be an ensemble but more contained. I think that's one of the things that works about Chorus Line is it's all contained in that one space, so it's not, there's nothing to pull you away from it really like this had. Lego Melons 15, who I answered the question for, said, I'd like to know your favorite and least favorite song / character. Favorite character is probably Tom. I don't know, I think his story just felt the most emotionally satisfying. I think I wanted to like Lex more, but I just never really got that connected to her. Least favorite character I already said was Sherman. Just felt super out of place. Favorite song? Definitely If I Fail You. I loved that song. Yeah, it like made me cry. That was one of the ones that I remembered most too from when I watched the digital ticket. I also loved whatever Santa Claus, what's that song? Deck the Halls of Northville High School. It's so silly, it's so dumb, but it's so funny. And it's just like a really catchy song and it works really well for what it was like trying to do. Like that sounds like something you would like hear on like a fake terrible movie. Least favorite song? Probably, I don't know, either Monsters and Men I did not like. Like I said, the tone just didn't fit. It just felt weird. And I think the fact that it was part of the whole president's storyline just didn't really help it. I think the Wiggly jingle is just like whatever. Like it wasn't bad or anything. I just like don't care about it. Although the dance breakdown was really good. I did love when it's Robert and James doing do the wiggle, that part. Yeah, that was really cool. But the actual music of it is like whatever. Although I think the line that Kim has, she's like, it's certified laundry safe, was really funny. So yeah, that was even the worst song. Like I said before, there's no like really skippable songs, just ones I didn't like as much. Kate CS about relative lack of comic relief, which I already kind of talked about, but I think it was purposeful. Like I said before, I don't think it was because the jokes didn't land or were bad. I just think that they didn't have as many, but I didn't mind it personally. Valeria M, I remember reading this comment yesterday, said something really smart that I agree with about Ethan, which is, I just sat there like, I should be sad. That's Robert fucking Mannion, but I've only seen this character for like 2 or 3 scenes. I don't know him. It's like attending a funeral of a distant relative. You're sad, of course, but you're because someone died, but you're not like heartbroken because you didn't know them. That is like a really good way to put it. It's like I felt like, oh, I know I should be sad, but like I don't feel that sad because I just don't know this person. So yeah, that's a really good comment, so thanks for that. I also would really like a better explanation to Lex and Hannah's powers. I agree. I think it was just really kind of just left there without much explanation. This comment from Ashlyn M. Basically, because I said I didn't know if I couldn't tell immediately if it was darker. I definitely think it's darker now than Guy. They basically said the reason is in Guy people weren't really killing people like the aliens were, but in Black Friday, rather than having aliens take over the bodies, it was literally these adults corrupted by their own greeds and desires, which led them to killing people, so it wasn't justifiable. Which, yeah, I totally agree that the fact that these were real people and not like, especially like when you think like Charlotte had like guts hanging out of her and stuff, like it was very over the top and stuff, so it didn't seem as bad, even though it was like dark and people were dying. It was like less. That's why like one of the darker moments of the show was with Alice and Bill, because it was more grounded compared to like Sam or Charlotte. But this show, all of the deaths were a little bit more, even like Linda's death was kind of like that, because it was like, oh, you're like, it's Becky shooting Linda that was out of self-defense. Like it wasn't even because of Wiggly. That definitely made it a lot darker. And I think that the fact that it was tied into bigger like social issues made it darker too, because it wasn't just like this detached thing. Future Savannah here. Because even though this video is like an hour long, I realized I didn't talk about the ending. So the kind of 3 theories that I've heard quick are 1, that it's a nuke from Russia, 2, that it is the meteor from the beginning of Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals, 3, that it's some kind of something with the time loop, that it's restarting the whole universe or whatever. I don't know. I think the nuke kind of makes sense, but also I don't know if they would hear that from where they are in Hatchetfield. However, because of the portal, it could have just gone through the portal, you know, directly over at Hatchetfield instead of to DC or New York or wherever it was meant to go. So that definitely makes sense. I think the meteor theory ties into the time loop thing. Like I think that you can't just have it be the meteor without having it be something with a time loop or with alternate universes or something, because we know linearly that Black Friday doesn't happen before Guy because of Paul and Emma. So I don't know. I think probably the time loop is the most likely thing, but yeah, any of them could really work. But yeah, sorry that I forgot to talk about that this video quality is so shitty. Theories. I gotta find the comment. Somebody asked about Webby. It's a really good comment. Is Webby a spider or a duck? And I didn't even think about that. Spider because spider webs, or duck because of webbed feet? And I was like, that's such a good question. But yeah, people were talking about, I keep seeing pictures of Aragog when people are talking about Webby. But yeah, I didn't think about the duck. I don't know. I think Nick on Twitter said something that's going to be explained more eventually. But yeah, that seemed like a weird thing. That was it just her imaginary friend, or was like some real thing, or was it just what she called her, you know, powers? I don't know. I think the whole thing with Hannah and Lex's powers was really not, it was kind of just thrown in there, especially with Lex at the end. Like it was kind of like Deus Ex Machina a little bit. I don't know. I think it could have been developed more. But yeah, as to other theories, I've read a lot of good stuff. I tried not to read any during the interim between the digital ticket and the YouTube version, because I just wanted to like let it go for then, but I read a couple on like Reddit and stuff. I guess I had just thought automatically that it was just like a different alternate universe kind of thing, kind of like in comic books, how there's like, you know, different Marvel universes or whatever, like different Batmans where they don't really have to do with each other, they just exist. Like it's all in Gotham, but it's different. But I guess now that I think about it, there is more like other explanations. Like I really do like the time loop thing. Like basically the theory is that Groundhog Day type thing where all these events happen in Hatchetfield and then reset to go. I think that the one that I read goes back to Emma's sister's death, because that's kind of like the starting point of what makes Emma move back to Hatchetfield in that one, and then in Black Friday of what kind of sets up the whole thing with Tom. And yeah, I think that's a really interesting theory. I do like that idea. I guess we'll have to see how it plays into the next one, and then like, you know, the time loop won't stop until they fix things, I guess. And then there's like other theories that are just like, kind of just like pocket universe things, like, oh, it's all in Hatchetfield, but it's different versions of it and different timelines. I think they all make sense, and I know people are talking about the time loop thing because of Emma at the end of Guy was like, oh, it's just a fucking loop. Like, I don't know, maybe that is on purpose. It's hard to tell. It's just, I think the coolest thing about this is the fact that we can talk about this. Like, I don't know any other musical that I've heard people talk about like theories like this about. I think like the closest thing I can think of is so stupid is people that say that Connor is a ghost in Dear Evan Hansen. I wonder if there will be more stuff with powers in there, because nobody had powers in Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals, so I wonder if that's like a specific thing to this show, or if that's going to be a continued thing of there are people with special powers. I wonder if Hatchetfield is like the Twilight Zone, where it's kind of just this generic place where anything like this happens, or if it's tied to this specific place and if they're all gonna really be connected. Because right now, I guess, yeah, this connections are pretty strong with Emma and Paul, and then with McNamara, so I wonder if there's going to be more, if they're always going to be specifically connected like that, or if it's going to be more general, like, oh, this is just a place where spooky things happen, which is what I kind of thought it would be going in. When I first watched it, I thought it was just going to be like the Twilight Zone, where it was like, oh, Hatchetfield is just a place where spooky things happen, rather than, and I thought it was going to be linear rather than like this whole expanded big universe thing. Also, somebody in the comments said something about a Starkid expanded universe, and like kind of like the Pixar theory, that apparently there's a theory that all the shows are in the same universe. I think something has to do with like all the different god things, like in Starship they're like, thank, you know, dead god, and we have Duck, the duck is the Lord, and now Wiggly, and like, oh, I don't know, I think that's so funny. I love stuff like that because it's like very pointless and there's nothing comes out of that, but it's like just fun to talk about. Yeah, other theories, my biggest one is either just like general different timelines, because of like, I think the whole thing, the black and white, is kind of like just kind of some kind of dimension, so like there could be just other timelines within the different dimensions. I like that idea, which is kind of a general idea that's not really super specific, like you don't need a super heavy explanation. And I also do like the time loop thing. Like, I had not thought of that on my own, but I do like the idea that it's a time loop, that there's an endpoint to it, that at some point, some show, it will be fixed and the time loop will stop and things will just go on, as, you know, we'll save the world and things will go on. I think for the future, I like this idea of this musical universe because it's so unique. I hope that they can explore new ideas, and I also like the idea of the sci-fi musical as a kind of something to do social commentary into, because it just works. It's a very good, I think, medium for that, because musicals can do that really well in general. Sci-fi and horror is a huge way to do social commentary, so I like that they can do that, and there's like a lot of really wide possibilities for the Hatchetfield universe, I guess. And I don't know, who knows, maybe it won't just be musicals, maybe they'll do other tie-ins, short films or novels, or I don't know. The possibilities are really endless. Also, what do I think about Nerdy Prudes Must Die? I know a lot of people have asked me. I don't know much about it. I know a lot of people have been talking about the connection of Grace Chastity, and then there's also Hot Chocolate Boy. Are they going to be, and now there's the Cineplex, Joey Cineplex character. The name Nerdy Prudes Must Die makes me think of more of like a 2000s kind of thing, like some kind of ridiculous, maybe like a slasher thing, or just kind of like, I don't know, like the Scream movies or something. I don't watch horror movies because I'm a wuss, but you know, something like that, just more like kind of ridiculous. Or maybe having to do with like high school. Like I think of like a 2000s like high school comedy. So maybe it'll be something like that. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know when that'll come out, or if they'll do anything in between, or I'm sure probably it'll be the same with the Langs doing the writing the book, and Jeff doing the music, which I'm excited to see. I think his like I said, his lyrics have been improving a lot, so I think he's getting better and better, so I'm really excited to see, just for Starkid goes in general. Also, another thing, this isn't a theory, but it is kind of just a miscellaneous thing. I also think Black Friday would make a good movie. I think it would be fairly easy to make if you cut out the president stuff, because you could film it all in one location. It could literally just be filmed in a real mall somewhere. Throwing that out there, that could also be, this could be a whole movie series. I don't think I'll make a whole video about that, but if you have any other thoughts in the comments. I think that's it for now. If there's anything I didn't talk about that you want me to talk about, or any questions or anything like that, any other theories you want me to, I guess, react to or comment on, you know, just leave it in the comments. As always, thank you for watching. This video is so long. Make sure to subscribe, watch my other videos. I made a 3 a.m. reaction video to Black Friday. I also have done my harmonies video for it, plus all my other, watch my video essays, all that stuff. Starting next week, starting on the 16th, you guys are getting an entire week of videos every single day for 7 days. I'm very, very excited about them. I don't know if you can guess what they are. I would be very surprised, but it's for a specific thing. Stay tuned for that. If you wanna see that, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Make sure to like, comment, follow me on Twitter. I'm Silvana LTD on Twitter. Leave me your thoughts. Bye.